Okay, Conjoy. Thanks for showing us that little video that you did put up by, oh gosh, the guy that came, Alex Collier. Yeah, the guy that came out about being, having contact, I guess it was back in the early 90s sometime, with the Andromedans, right? And he was talking about soul transfer technology and how downloading information works and how consciousness transport systems work. And it's a huge subject. And I suppose if you watched all my videos, everything sort of comes full circle when I always refer to my childhood. Okay, and why that is so important in relation to when he talked about how you can get a particular physical body down to a certain level of frequency and make a soul transfer and then download the information. And as simple as this is going to sound, it actually works that way. Imagine that you're a computer, right? And you have RAM in your computer, right? Which means all the information that's held in memory, much like the way the AI works, right? Which is finite artificial life. So what is it doing? It's mapping data, which is mathematical algorithms of what we experience. Okay, so when we experience something, that's recorded in memory, right? Okay, so if you're going to operate on a memory-driven program in an APIN system, which is an application program interface, the application means the application of consciousness energy to experience the programs, or if you will, run the vehicle or run the biocomputer. Right? So now you have another unit of consciousness that now has memory that's downloaded that came out of what? A memory bank. So now they can download the memory bank, right, with the consciousness that is going to run the memory bank in that biocomputer. Okay, so in many ways, this is no different than everybody's running a computer connected to a Gaia motherboard. Okay, running resistors, diodes, capacitors. If you've ever looked at how a computer, a motherboard is built, it's a bigger motherboard, a circuit board. You know, because when you have the electric and the magnetic relationship between electrical currents, sound currents, right, sound and light, right, and because I'm one, I call myself a one. I'm one with all creation, that I'm gifting electrons at a higher rate of speed, which is like eternity. So I'm experiencing eternity through my heart and my soul, right? So my oversoul is running the vehicle as a result of being it's like, if you're going to jump into a place, it's like jumping into one big massive computer networks, okay? Language networks, right? Which are mathematical algorithm networks, or if you will, mathematical geometric networks, right? And the way that the angles or lines of communication that relate to the actual spin rotation of tones, sound, and light, and the relationship that sound and light have with each other when it comes to creation mechanics. So when I was a child and I had my avatar up and running at a very high rate of speed, for self-evident reasons, because you realize you're coming in here to do a mission. So this is sort of how it works. When they can data mine you and take pictures of your DNA and your codes, right, then it means that they can create another copy of that, or if you will, another software. That's software. You're running software. Okay, so they can make a copy of your software. Okay, that the imprint, which means the consciousness that is running the DNA, which is running on the codes, which represent the instruction sets, which are the chromosomes, which is like a ladder, which is a stairway to heaven, right? Spiral waves, curved space vectors. Okay, so the simplicity of this is that I recognize by reading the codes, which means you're a mirror, you're a holographic mirror. So the speed at which I'm translating, okay, the geometrics, okay, which is the mathematical algorithms or the mathematical geometry of the system that you jump into, you realize that something's feeding on your energy. So I realized I'm in an energy harvesting system. So that means shields up. That means activate your heart shield, the planetary shield, the universal shield. Okay, so that's what I did as a child. Okay, because you realize they're after your soul. Okay, and the obvious is when you're in a black hole and it's running on finite light, because it's lost its line of communication with diamagnetic zero, which means it's not experiencing the primal sound and light currents, which means it's not experiencing eternity. So that's chasing electrons. So when it's chasing electrons, where is it going to get its voltage from? Somebody that's connected to the primal sound and light field. Okay, so they realize your soul is connected to the primal sound and light field. Now you're a target. So how are you going to be able to perform your missions as a security team in here if you can't go in and out, which is phasing in and out between pre-matter phase consciousness, which is pure love. That's pure eternal love that I experience through my heart. So what that means is you're phasing in and out so fast they can't take a picture. Okay, so you can pop up all sorts of plays. Where is he now? Where is she now? Right? In order to be able to do the grid work by releasing the codes, because it means that your template, which is the template that you're running, okay, which is geographic, right? Geometry, right? Which means you're running the math codes. Remember, God doesn't make any errors. And that's when you get into error codes in computers. You know, if one computer wants to talk to another computer, they have to be able to translate the mathematical language. Otherwise, it doesn't compute, right? That's numbers, right? So now you get into the complex number space. Now you get back into negative slash plus, which is the different torque speed differential between the two, right? So the difference between an inverter and a torque converter. And I covered that in a previous video. So when you're in perfect balance, right, between both, or if you will, what I do when I light myself on fire, because the previous video that I did talked about the most powerful fire ritual there is a fire ritual, right? So you realize what phosphorus is, right? That's the energy when it catches on fire, because you know that you have a flash. To have a fire, you need flash. Like a flash drive. You see a flash of light, just like there's a flash of light when conception takes place in a woman's womb, right? To activate the egg. And then the data, the visual information data, which represents the genetics, which represents the mathematical codes, now gets sent to a lab, the girl's lab. I call it the girl's lab, the female mitochondria, right? Okay, so now you pull from that lab, right, the best data, the best available data. Right? And that's called BAT, which is the best available technology, which is the best available biotechnology. So they monitor all this because they want to create a super race. But they need the codes. They have to introduce the codes that represent the instruction sets, which represents software development. Right? Okay. So we're talking software development. Just like if you ever seen the movie Blade Runners, you see different versions of Blade Runners. The most recent version of Blade Runners, you see one Blade Runner taking out an earlier model, right? Finite shelf life. You know, it's just like, hey, what model you want to run today? It's much like, hey, I'm going to run around in a 1932 Roadster, you know, that's running on a motor that's been tricked out and it's got 750 horsepower, right? And so you tweaked it. You made it different than what it was originally came out of the factory, right? So now you get into original genetic engineering. Now you get into hybrids. Right? Just like the indigos, right? Remember when Ashadian came out and said, hey, I'm a hybrid, okay? Well, I'm one with all creation I'm gifting love to, see? So, and so this is where I sort of avoid the subject of labels and how all that, depending on what's held in cellular memory, particularly if it's trauma and it triggers a negative response in you as a result of the words and the letters that I use in the format that they're sequenced, right? So that's a map read. So he's right about that, okay? Yep, and that's why protecting your energy field shields up, right? So there are certain practices, obviously, that allow you to be able to do that. I've covered that in a number of my videos about being a high-speed generator of neurons. Your heart is your biggest power plant, right? So you want your crystalline shield to be up, right? That's your universal, galactic, and planetary heart shield to protect your auric energy field, right? And so there's a whole range of different things that you can do to be able to do that, right? As a matter of fact, there was a guy that did a video that I put up, I guess it was yesterday, put up by the Voyager Materials. This wasn't Asha Diane, it was another speaker that was doing code activations. And very powerful stuff. And he talked about, for example, you can sort of think of yourself as a computer, right? And just like when you sit at a laptop, and you're going to create, if you will, a command function, so that if anything that you experience in the future, then you can put it in the recycle bin and get rid of it, right? So in other words, you're running a computer, no different than running a laptop, but you're running a supercomputer because that's your central nervous system. You know, the 7 nerve centers down in your spine, right? 7, like Rainbow 7 Bridge, right? The color charts, the color codes, just like when you go into any motor vehicle, right? A combustion motor, and you see the wiring. I don't know if you've ever had an opportunity to see a mechanic in a garage pull out what's called the wiring harness, you know, and that looks like, well, it's like a huge ball of yarn. Like, how could I ever figure out how that works? Because all the lines, which represent all the electrical connections, are color coded, right, by the wires and numbers, right? So, you know, you can go look at in any factory manual that shows the wiring harness and how it all works, including the wiring harness that went into the space shuttle, which was known as the Iron Bird. I went in there and looked at all the wiring on that thing. They had 25 backup computer systems on that thing. So that's redundancy after redundancy after redundancy after redundancy, which is like failure after failure after failure after failure. And I'm going, you need 25 computer backup systems for this thing? Man, you're spending a lot of time and energy just to be able to get around on that thing. Like a slowpoke, right? So this is where you get into the speed stuff, right? Because it's no different than a camera, right? When you go out and get yourself a Nikon or any camera for that matter, and you need a negative, right, in order to be able to, for the picture, the colors to show, right? So that's what you do with your eyeballs. They're holographic processors, visual information processors of mathematical data, which is represented by the codes, which is represented by the software that you're running, right? So what did I do in 2016? That's called a full recalibration, right? So I lit myself on fire, right? Because that's what it is. I shared on my video a while back, I did one on going into the deeper aspects, because the fire ritual is the most powerful ritual there is. It's much like, I used to use a metaphor for that, just like Joan of Arc, okay? She was, apparently to the book that I'm reading yesterday, was the last being on Earth that was running a pure silver light aura, was Joan of Arc. I can't testify to that, okay? But it wouldn't surprise me. She was burned at the stake, okay? So you can see how that works when a couple of years ago I was wanting to jump into a volcano because I love to be around living, breathing, spiritual, living magma, right? So you know that there is a spirit that is in all that fire between sound and light, right? A living, breathing earth. Earth is a living organism that breathes just like we do. That's aloha. That's a living breath of love. So we celebrate love and the eternal living spirit with eternal unconditional love. So love is the most powerful fire magic, right? All you have to do is look at any volcano that goes off, right? That's an enormous amount of energy, right? And then you get into planetary shields, right? So that's why protecting your shield is so critical, right? By the practices, the daily practices of what we've learned to be able to maintain and protect our energy field, which is your spirit, right? The spirit that is in the energy, the essence of your spirit, protecting your soul, right? Your soul matrix. Yeah. So thanks for that, Kunjoy. Yeah, people are in learning mode. High-speed learning. Have a great day, y'all. Be good to yourselves. Aloha. Mua.